I guess I've always just been a creative. Since I was young, I was always into fashion. And something that my mom told me not too long ago that I have no recollection of. She said that when I was in high school, she asked me, "What do you want to do? Like, what do you really want to do?" And I said, if I could do anything, I would just design clothes. And I don't remember ever saying that because I was on a trajectory to law school really early on in high school, and I knew that that's what I was going to do. I was 20 years old when I went to law school, so laser focused.
Mashallah.
I was
Wow.
going there, you know. So, but that said, and I think a lot of attorneys are this way. We're very right left brain. I know a ton of friends who are attorneys who have a side hustle that is very creative because we need that outlet.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like a typical science brain or something, because I think you need both sides of your brain to be an effective lawyer. So I always had a side creative hustle, whether it was just personal, me trying to like sew my own clothes, or I would embroider other people's clothes and sell it to them in college. In middle school and high school, I would like make beaded jewelry and sell it. So there was always also that entrepreneurial aspect of like a hustle
Yeah.
through my creative endeavor, because, you know, I grew up like middle class. I had to, if I wanted to dress a certain way, I had to pay for it. And so I had to figure out a way to make my own money at a very early age. I think my dad gave me an allowance of like $10 a week or something, which is like, you know, when you're in high school and everyone's wearing Abercrombie and it's like $60 a sweater.
Enough.
Yeah, like
Yeah, that was rough.
so yeah, so it was always in me. I always had it. And then it wasn't until, actually what I do remember is I was working as an attorney, and this is right when, you know, Facebook is kind of just popping off and people are starting to brand themselves. You hadn't really seen today, God, when we think about it, like everybody has their online persona and everybody has an Instagram page for whatever it is that they do. But this is pre all of that. And I remember just seeing like stuff simmer with people who had side hustles, whether it was like photography or makeup or whatever it was, start, you know, on Facebook or like put up their own website. And I remember looking at it and being like, if I don't do this, I'm going to regret it. And if I see somebody else doing this, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot.
Amy, specifically what you're doing now.
Specifically what I'm doing now, which was, I don't know that I could have defined it at that time. It was just like my own thing in a creative space that had to do with fashion outside of the law.
Gotcha.
I knew that if I didn't do something, I'd regret it later.
Yeah.
So after that thought that you had and just that build up and that anticipation, I mean, what'd you do after that?
So, you know, I was working as an attorney, and the law was always my first passion. The reason I went to law school is because I'm just incredibly passionate about social justice and issues, particularly as it pertains to race. Being biracial growing up, it was a subject and a topic for me that I was so passionate about before I even knew what civil rights meant. And it's because as a kid, when you have certain experiences, you just don't want the world to operate in that way. And I always tried to take it upon myself to fix it or to understand it, to learn why this happens. And so I knew very early on, I want to go to law school specifically to specialize in civil rights and to be a social justice advocate. So, I mean, that's heavy stuff. And, you know,
Yeah. When did you make that decision? Because that's like, as a teenager, that's a really, really heavy topic to take on.
Right.
yeah, like I said, I don't think I even truly knew what it was. I couldn't even define it. I just knew it in my heart. I knew that I wanted to fight for people. I wanted to be a voice for the voiceless. It wasn't until literally I was in law school and there was a class called Race in the Law. And I was like, oh, that's the thing. And I would take every class that was like race and other for, you know, Section 1983 constitutional law. I would take all of those classes because that was where my passion lied. And so it was in law school that I knew right away, I'm not here to become a corporate lawyer. I'm not here to like, I'm here to be working most likely at a nonprofit, which is what I ended up doing. I worked for the NAACP, for the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, for a private civil rights litigation firm, Access. And then I was a staff attorney for CARE Michigan. So,
Okay, nice.
so that was my
work.
trajectory. And it was, very, very rewarding and very time consuming. So I really didn't get into my own groove until I got married, left Detroit, and moved to Chicago.
Nice.
So now at this time I'm in Chicago. I'm not working because I'm picking up odd jobs, but I didn't take the bar in Illinois. So I can't technically, be working full time as an attorney just yet. And so it was actually my husband who had the idea, and he came home one day and he was like, I have the best idea. He walked down that corridor and he was like, let's start a Muslim fashion brand. Wow. And I was like, what? Like, I just laughed. I was just like, are you crazy? Like, you're crazy. Because for me, it was always just about fashion. I never put it specifically to Muslim women or hijab. I was just always into fashion. Yeah. And when he said that and he explained more and he was like, listen, Muslim women, like, they deserve to be acknowledged and validated. And in my mind, I guess what I was grappling with was, again, this is 2010, right? This is pre-hijabi bloggers, this is pre-Instagram. Yeah, exactly. Like, put your head in that, your time, like, or yourself in that space. To say Muslim and fashion or Islam and fashion was like an oxymoron. Like, you couldn't, like, those two things didn't mesh.
That's what I was gonna say. How did he even conceive the idea? What was his process thinking of it? If you can answer that.
Yeah, I think with him, he's just number one, he's a dreamer. It's like his head is in the clouds. My feet are on the ground. We're very opposite in that way. So for him, there are no boundaries. There's no ceiling. There's no wall. Like, everything just is as it is. And he's just, I don't know how he walks around in the world. Like, I'm not like that at all. So I will find everything that's going to say no. And like the reasons why you shouldn't do something. Whereas for him, he saw it as really logical. Like, here's almost 1 billion women around the world who wear this thing, whether it's on their head or in the clothing that they wear that tends to be more modest, yet nobody is catering to her specifically. Why? That's dumb. And if we don't do it, somebody else will. So we should jump on this.
And you would be kicking yourself.
Exactly. And I think because I already had that thought, and it was bubbling within me for so many years of wanting to do my own thing, wanting to get into the fashion space. It just made a ton of sense. And what Ahmed brought to the table was he sharpened the idea so that I could take it and really run with it.
Nice. And you made it something that works with you. For example, now when it comes to social justice and certain movements, everybody believes that they have to be on the ground, that they because everybody else is doing it, this is what I need to do because I need to quote unquote fit in. But that's not what fits you. And you had the background for having that social justice reform type of idea or, mindset. And now look what you're doing. You got that fashion and that idea and also still focusing on that because you want to make sure that women are represented, are protected, and make sure that, hey, you can't mess with these type of women. And you're very competitive because, like, if I don't do it, someone else is going to come in and cash out on this idea. So I can't let that happen. So that's just awesome,
Yeah, I am insanely competitive. It's a double-edged sword in that, like, it keeps me moving, but it's like, oh God, it's so bad. Just like with anything, like me and my brothers, I grew up in a family of men. Like, my dad raised me as a single dad and 2 older brothers. And so I was just like in the mix as one of the boys. And I just grew up with such a competitive nature about me. And I'm not even just talking about business, just like literally anything. Like, I'll be like,
Jenga.
Like walking and like I'll get to the door before Ahmed and be like, you suck, bro. And he's like, we've really been racing. Like, what is your problem? But it's bad. But to your earlier point about bringing my social justice background into the work, I think for so long I had, and I wish if I could go back, this is something that I would have done differently. But for so long, I think I didn't fully step into my role because I didn't see it as worthy enough as the previous work that I was doing. And it wasn't until I really had a friend kind of shake me and be like, yo, I don't think you understand the impact that you actually have in this space. Like, you think this space is frivolous, but imagine this space without your voice in it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
So how's that pressure once you did understand, like, you were one of the big players within this small space? How was that pressure and how did it push you to just keep going?
It's alhamdulillah, I don't see it as pressure. I see it as a real responsibility. I see it as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me certain gifts and talents and skill sets, specifically tailored to me to do this work. And so I better do it. And I just see it as the utmost clarity that this is truly my life's work and my life's purpose. That like I had these two competing passions growing up between race and social justice, and then this like creative fashion thing. And the fact that I get to fuse the two of them together is not an accident. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I sharpen both, you know, like the 10,000 hours thing, Malcolm Gladwell theory. I mean, I put in my time in my bedroom alone, you know, whether it was like beading or embroidering or sewing or like scrapbooking or whatever it was, that creative, you just like flipping through magazines incessantly. Like that's where my branding brain comes from, that I'm able to aesthetically successfully create a brand. But then at the same time, you know, those legal hours of training and working and it just being a part of me, I know that none of that was by accident. Mm-hmm. And so I feel that I was put on this earth for a specific purpose to do this work. And as long as God wants me to do this work, I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. And if, you know, one day I'm led elsewhere, I'll do that, you know, because I'm just led by whatever God wants me to do. And I feel right now the weight of what it is I need to be doing.
Yeah. I mean, it just sounds like you're just in the moment, just present. And from the time that your husband gave you that idea, it literally was just up to you to take it on and take responsibility to do it, because he could give you thousands of ideas, but if you don't move on it, then it wasn't going to happen. So kudos to you. So once you kind of decided to move forward and that this was what you're going to do, I also understood that you needed help, right? And I know the best entrepreneurs, what they say is like, you just have to get smarter people around you. And you've been doing other work and you were just getting your feet wet in this work. And I loved how you went on Craigslist and you're looking for different people to come help you. I love that story because you put in the work again. You told me that you interviewed 20 to 25 people back to back to back to back all in one day, trying to figure out what they're figuring out, whether it's the warehouse idea or how you should go with branding. And it is one of those things where if you don't know, you have to find out. How did you kind of develop that mindset, and how has it helped you to today's, like, if I don't know the answer, I need to find it? Because it's so easy to be like, well, this is hard, or I just don't know it.
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. With my husband, it's like intense curiosity. But at the same time, it's also utmost security in who you are. Mm-hmm. If you have to be secure enough to say, here's what I'm really good at, and here's what I suck at. And the things that I suck at, I'm going to go delegate and find somebody else to do. But these things I'm really good at, I'll do them. And that's been our philosophy since day one till today. Like the things that I'm really, really good at, I'm going to handle. Things that we suck at, let's outsource, let's hire, let's get a contractor, let's find an agency, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, you know, a really good entrepreneur knows themselves inside and out and has the security to be able to say, you know, I don't know this thing, but there is somebody who is, and let's sell them on the dream and get them to come work for us really cheap.
Yeah. So how was it? How was that selling people on, you know, this dream, right? That at that point in time, no one else was really doing what you were doing. 2010, you know, like Instagram was kind of just get going.
She was on Craigslist finding people.
Yeah, you were on Craigslist. Like, do we even use Craigslist anymore, right? So like, how was that starting a team? And how far into the business journey did you actually like start hiring people and bring them on board?
So, gosh, our company is like, I see our company in these like two different eras. So pre-New York, I think post-New York is like a completely different company. Pre-New York, when Ahmed and I were still in Chicago, we actually started as a modest clothing brand. And so while, you know, I can sketch and I have the vision, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Like I can make a basic pattern, but I can't, you know, I can't do the things that an actual designer does. So the first thing I did and the first hire was an assistant designer. And, you know, like you said, I put out a Craigslist ad. I sat down with, you know, 20, 25 girls. And I hired the smartest one. And in every single interview, I learned something. I would just ask them about the process. Because again, I have no clue. I didn't go to fashion school. I have no clue how this stuff works. So then I learned, okay, from the initial design, you need to create a mock-up pattern with muslin. And then from there, you can perfect it and drape it, and then go and then source the actual fabric that you want, create the actual perfect fabric after that mock-up, and then create the final sample that you then take to whatever manufacturer who's going to produce it in mass. Like, there was so many steps that I was like, I didn't know any of this. Yeah. And after the end of those 2 days of interviews, I knew from start to finish exactly what I needed to do, who I was going to hire, and how I was going to execute. So again, it's that like curiosity and staying super hungry of like picking up like a sponge everything you can about this new endeavor, and then just executing. So that was our first hire, and she helped us with our first line, our second, maybe like our first 4 lines. And then the other hire that we brought on wasn't until we moved to Dubai a couple years later, which was, since we moved to Dubai, all of our inventory was still in the US, and she basically housed all of our inventory, shipped it out to all of our customers, also did customer service, and like would help us out with blog writing.
Oh, that's day one right there.
That's
She's actually with us today.
Nice.
We hired her in 2012. She was with us for like a few years. She left to do her master's, and then when we moved to New York, we hit her up because she's if I could clone her, like I would.
Respect.
I would have a team of errands, and she now is she's moved from doing that in 2012 to then being our merchandise analyst in 2016 into visual merchandising, and now she's our product manager on the engineering team.
Wow.
So,
Big shout out to her.
So what is the process of scaling a business? And this, because we have people from all over that are doing so many different things. Mm-hmm. We being entrepreneurs, like, this is our business masterclass right here as well, right? So like, what is the process of taking a business from the initial phase where it's still a concept, kind of, you're making, a few different things, few different products, to, okay, now it's time to start hiring. Okay, now we need different departments. Now it's beyond just us and what we can do by shipping and come up with designs. How do you scale in that way?
So for us, we scaled for real after we raised a round.
Nice.
Okay.
It took capital. Because for the first 6 years of running the company, I was also working as an attorney. So now I've moved to Dubai, and now I've got a full-time gig. I'm a law clerk at, the financial district court. Like, it's like the international courts of Dubai. And so this is my it's still a side hustle. It didn't turn full-time until 2016. So in those first 6 years, scaling was something I was actually kind of afraid of, because I was like, I don't know that I have the time, and I don't even know that I want it. There's something within, the Muslim community pressure that we all have to do the professional job and do the conventional job. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was the law. And there was a lot of pressure on me that I put on myself, really, that I probably picked up from the society and community around me, mm-hmm. that I should play down this like side hustle and just focus on my legal career, because that's the conventional thing to do. So at the time, I don't even think I didn't like, we had friends who wanted to invest in our business early on, and I was like, that sounds like a lot, and I'm like, this is just fun. Mm-hmm. And so then in 2016, when I finally got over that, we moved to New York. Both my husband and I quit our jobs and came here to focus on it full time. The first thing we did was start networking in order to fundraise and raise a small round to scale the growth of the team. Build a team, scale the growth of the company.
So for those 6 years, I mean, it was so easy to be like, hey, this is just a side hustle, even if you see it works. Like, we both have great jobs. Sound like your husband had his own career set. You were an attorney. So in the Muslim term or the sense, you guys made it, right? You made it. You're at the destination, and alhamdulillah, you guys are married. So it's just like, what else is there? Right. But you guys knew that there was more. And what I want to ask you is that before you got those seeds of funding, I know that you didn't want to take out any loans just because of interest, and you know how that game works. And then you got a little loan from Ahmed's family that was very generous. But within those 6 years before you guys decided full time, I mean, how did you keep it alive? Right now we're doing this thing for 2 years, and we really haven't raised any money. And then every day we got to keep it alive, like literally. So it's been 2 years. You did it for 6 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we, number one, never got paid. I mean, in 6 years, we didn't get paid. We never paid ourselves. It was a passion project. So everything went back into the business to reinvest in inventory, in marketing efforts, in whatever it was. And we also just had to be really, really creative about ways to get capital. So like an example of that is in the early days when we were, trying to launch this first clothing collection, we needed capital to do that. We got a small $5,000 loan from Ahmed's parents, but it takes a lot more than that to do everything you need to do. I mean, just like the setup fees alone, the inventory costs and everything else. So what I did was I used to wear vintage scarves as hijabs in high school and college because I've just always been like a vintage nerd. And my friends would always ask me where they're from. And I'm like, oh, it's vintage and whatever. Like cachet around that, right? And so I was like, let me do this. I'm going to scour all the vintage stores in Chicago, grab everything that I can be worn as a hijab and restore them, fully wash them and restore them. And then we'll sell them on the website. And that's how we'll launch. And we'll use that money to then fund the clothing line.
Nice.
And I was able, and I'm a hustler. I'm from Detroit. We don't mess around. So I would go to these stores and be like, listen, how many of these scarves do you have hanging around? I'll take them off your hand. I'm buying it in bulk. I would get them down to $1 to $2 a pop.
And how much were you flipping them for?
$25.
Yo, that is...
You wild. You wild.
Love it.
I love it.
You have to make it seem like you're doing them the favor. I'm taking these all off your hands, hundreds of them at a time. Otherwise, they're just going to collect dirt and nobody wants these.
You're solving a problem.
No. Quick, you make some quick money. I win, you win.
Exactly.
Capiche.
So that we made anywhere between $800 to $1,000 every week. We had a Tuesday drop. We still have our Tuesday drops, but that's how it started, was the vintage scarves. Every Tuesday, they would all sell out within at least 48 hours, a lot of times that day. Because it's one of a kind. There's only one pieces. And I think we put up 20, 25. So we'd make $800 to $1,000 a week. And all that money would go into paying Florina, who's my assistant designer, as well as fueling the capital for that first inventory.
Wow.
Bye.
Thanks everybody for watching the clip from this excellent episode. If you guys loved it, make sure you guys go and subscribe. So over in this area. And if you guys want to watch more of these clips and full-length videos, you can go right over here. Alright. So